President Obama and British Prime Minister David Cameron, writing in today's Times of London, said neither nation would be cowed by the brutality of Islamic State forces, also known as ISIL. They urged other NATO nations to join the fight. When the threats to our security increasingly emanate from outside NATO's borders, we must build more partnerships with others who share our values and want a more tolerant and peaceful world, the leaders wrote. That includes supporting the partners who are taking the fight to ISIL on the ground, as we have done by stepping up support for Kurdish and Iraqi security forces.
During World War II, it was customary for a number of bomber pilots and their crew to paint greetings on the side of the bombs before dropping them on enemy positions. Were that still the case in today's modern warfare, those salutations might include something along the lines of, "You can run, but you cannot hide," or perhaps, "Please say hello to the celestial virgins." For there is little doubt of a job well done being passed around in the wake of 3 top ISIS militants no longer breathing air. Now comes the postscript. What it accomplished, the importance of ground troops in making more happen, and what comes next. Welcome to MidPoint, the adjunct professor of Homeland Security at Liberty University and national security analyst Ryan Mauro, and former CIA operative, veteran of multiple deployments for counterterrorism, Gary Berntsen. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Gary, I'm going to start with you right now. We're going to go to what has just come out in the news. Ahmed Ghadain, the leader of the Somali militant group Al-Shabaab, was killed in a U.S. military operation. That, according to the Pentagon today. Does this not point out that while there may be people yelling many times for plans and ideas and things to get done, that there are things being done and that there are terrorists out there being targeted, action is being taken?
Clearly the intelligence community is working and the U.S. military is working. They are doing, what needs to be done to collect intelligence. They're putting packages together, and they're acting against the groups that have been acting against us. This is part of the process, the normal, sort of routine of intelligence work and cooperation with Special Operations Command. I think they're doing an excellent job.
Ryan, let's get your reaction to this as well, because apparently, according to the Pentagon, the military was tipped off to what they called, quote, actionable intelligence strong enough, unquote, to suggest Ghadain's whereabouts. There is intelligence out there. Sometimes, though, I think perhaps for the American people, certainly for us, maybe even the administration itself, they don't get it all the time and don't get it fast enough. But when they get it, at least they're acting.
That's right. And Al-Shabaab is one of the best recruiters of Americans Al-Qaeda has. Up until ISIS, I would say that Al-Shabaab was the best recruiter of Americans within the Al-Qaeda ISIS brand of the jihadi world. One of the tip-offs that the government had was that after the airstrike happened, the survivors started rounding up everyone in the immediate area trying to find whoever tipped off the United States. That's the type of fear that I want them to have. I want them to all be looking at each other and saying, are you an American spy? So that's very good. This increases the splitting within Al-Shabaab. But ironically, it could also push Al-Shabaab closer to ISIS because some members of Al-Shabaab, specifically the American members, are very supportive of ISIS. So you could see a shift happen there.
Let me ask you this, Ryan. Are we doing a good enough job, in your opinion? And by the way, Gary, I'm going to ask you the same thing as well, but Ryan, to you first. Is this administration doing a good enough job on getting that intelligence on the ground? Because what you just pointed out is true. We need to have somebody there who technically is on the inside and is willing to give us that inside information, basically willing to be a snitch. Are we doing a good enough job of getting those snitches on our side?
In terms of battling Al-Qaeda, I think obviously we are, with Osama being killed, and then you had several other high-level Al-Qaeda operatives. Yesterday, you had a close aide to the so-called caliph of the Islamic State that was killed. But then there are also areas of improvement. For example, only recently did President Obama authorize aerial surveillance over Syria to identify ISIS targets. That should have been done long ago.
Now, there's a good point, Gary. The president only recently has come around to a certain way of thinking that the intelligence community, I'm sure, would have wanted a long time ago. So does that say to you that while we are getting slivers of intelligence here at least, we are still not doing a good enough job of pounding away and finding those people who will help us get on the inside?
Well, look, we have clearly been doing collection operations in Somalia for years. And we've been doing collection in all of these places for years. It's just when you have the information that's actionable that matters. It's not that there's a shortage of effort in collection. There's been plenty of collection. It's a type of collection that will allow you to act. You know, the intelligence community has not been sleeping. They've been collecting, they've been working. The opportunity came up. They were able to integrate the intelligence that was collected with an arm that could act. And so I would say, you know, kudos to the intelligence community and the special ops community for the act that was just taken.
Gary, with regard to the ISIS members being killed, 3 top Islamic ISIS members, including an aide to Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi being killed, is this truly significant? And I know that it is indeed, whenever you get some of the bad guys, it's significant. But knowing full well how spread out this organization is and how maybe they don't have one real figurehead like an Osama bin Laden, is this really something that's critical and important right now?
Well, of course, it's going to be critical to target the leadership there. It sends a message to the organization that we have the ability to reach out and act against you. You want to constantly be putting them under pressure because it will diminish their ability to run operations. So, you know, yes, it is important to do. We need to continue to do it. And you can rest assured that the United States is using human intelligence, signals intelligence, overhead, bringing all of these things together for all source intelligence collection that allow our policymakers and ultimately the commander-in-chief to be in a position to act.
Are you confident now that that commander-in-chief has been pushed to the point of making things happen a lot faster?
Well, you know, the point here is this: we're in a difficult situation here, and it's complex because it's more than just acting and doing airstrikes. We have a terrorist army that's been created in a space between 2 failed states. You have, you know, Syria in the west, and in the east you have Iraq. It's going to require, in addition to airstrikes and boots on the ground, we're going to require a policy to help rebuild or reconstruct Iraq in a sense that Sunnis that live in those areas that have been taken have some sort of vested interest in doing something other than jihad. Possibly in the end, Iraq will need some sort of federal system where that Sunni area is governed by Sunnis and not completely, you know, being, you know, bullied and attacked by the Shia majority government.
Few minutes we have left here, Ryan. I'm going to come to you next and switch up a little bit. The U.S. government, the State Department, their arm of strategic counterterrorism communications, they have released a video. Came out last week. It is violent. It is barbaric. It basically is pointed to those who may want to join ISIS or other terrorist groups and warn them what is coming. I do want to warn our audience here. There are some who could find some of these images disturbing, but these need to be seen. Now, while you answer that, Ryan, we're going to see a little piece of this video here because, remember, this is produced by the federal government. Is this a good idea for the government to be using these sorts of images to get to those people who may want to become terrorists?
Definitely. And it goes beyond just showing the extreme violence of the organization. It points out that their #1 target is Muslims. It points out that they say that there's no such thing as an Iraqi or a Syrian, that all Muslims are just one entity. So it's playing upon the local nationalism to whatever degree it exists. That's very important. And this does work because Al-Qaeda years ago was telling its affiliates, stop posting videos of beheadings. Just shoot the person. Because people that were supporting Al-Qaeda were saying that's just going too far and it was turning people against them. So there is a certain level of impact here that's very good. And it's good to see that the State Department is doing this. Earlier, they also released a video that was showing how the Assad regime in Syria was avoiding attacking ISIS targets because they thought that the rise of ISIS was good for the survival of the Assad regime. That's a powerful message to put out, and I like seeing that the State Department is doing that.
Gary, got about 60 seconds left to you. Is it a good idea, but also, do Americans need to see not only these images, but even the more graphic images to sometimes make them understand the type of enemy that we are going up against?
All of this falls within the realm of IO, information operations. The military is the primary mechanism which the U.S. uses to do the information operations war. You know, state calls it propaganda or counter-propaganda, but it's all information operations. And in this world now, you've got to play in this realm. It's about public opinion, and public opinion in the Arab world is very, very important. We're going to have to reach out, attempt to influence it as our opponents are attempting to influence it.
Let me just ask you, though, that last point. Do you think Americans need to see not only these images, but the grislier images to understand what's happening?
Well, I think that it's important that Americans, and it is graphic, and of course, this is not something you want your children looking at, but it tells the true story of what's happening on the ground. Americans and the world need to know and understand the violence, because only by understanding that will they provide support to the government to act against ISIS.
Ryan, 10 seconds to you. Do they need to see it?
Americans need to see it, and the world needs to see it. I think that this is important for everyone to see, and censorship is counterproductive in this regard.
It may indeed be to the point where Americans need to see it all. Ryan, Mauro, Gary Berntsen, thanks so much for joining us, gentlemen. We'll do it again.
Pleasure.
Later on this hour, what we may finally learn from declassified 9/11 documents about the involvement of the Saudis, right here on MidPoint.